What's up, guys? So a few days ago I put out a video that was about Metal Gear Solid that was called His Name is David. It was a two-parter, and that was pretty much like a little recap, a little intro to Metal Gear Solid 1, explaining who was who and what Foxhound was, kind of just introducing you to the terms. And now I'm going to go into the plot of Metal Gear Solid 1. I don't have a PlayStation. I've never had a PlayStation. I did have a PS1 a long time ago, but I wasn't able to play the Metal Gear Solid games. So I've never played the Metal Gear Solid games. I watched a full Let's Play for Metal Gear Solid 1. I saw the PlayStation version. I really liked it. Metal Gear Solid 1 has a really cool story. That's the only one I'm going to watch because I have the HD collection for the Xbox, which is Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and Peace Walker for the PSP. So I'm going to be playing those, and I don't know how I'm going to be able to play Metal Gear Solid 4, but I have to play that game. I'm going to have to get a PlayStation 3 somehow, or borrow one or something. I just have to play Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, because it just looks amazing. So Metal Gear Solid 1 is pretty much a nuclear threat, and Solid Snake, has to stop it. So this terrorist group, or recently turned terrorist group called Foxhound, that I explained in my other video, led by Liquid Snake, which is a clone of the original Snake, Naked Snake, or who they call Big Boss. And Solid Snake is also a clone of Big Boss. So, in other words, Liquid Snake and Solid Snake are brothers. So what Liquid is asking for is he wants $1 billion and Big Boss's body. And the reason why he wants Big Boss's body is because Liquid explains that all of Big Boss's clones, including Solid Snake, including himself, and including all of the genome soldiers, are suffering from extinction because of asymmetry. I didn't really understand this whole asymmetry thing, but it has to do with extinction and how all species that have gone extinct have this asymmetry thing in their DNA. Asymmetry means that they're not symmetrical, so they're not the same. But they need Big Boss's DNA to fix this, so that they can make it. I guess what they're trying to do is make it symmetrical, make it the same, so that they don't suffer as clones of Big Boss, and then instead they're more like a copy, like an exact copy of Big Boss. So it's like they're symmetrical. That's what I'm thinking that means. If you guys know exactly what that means, please let me know, because I was kind of confused when it came to that. And he's threatening, if Washington doesn't give him this stuff, he's gonna release a nuclear bomb via this thing called Metal Gear Rex. And this is where the name Metal Gear comes from. I never knew that Metal Gear was an actual machine. It's like a big robot thing that has guns. It's like a huge tank, like a walking tank. So that's what they call the Metal Gears. And this particular Metal Gear is called the Metal Gear Rex. And it has cannons and these missile launchers and all that. And they later realized, the scientists that were working on it, is that they put a nuclear weapon on it, shooting from the cannon. And they didn't realize that it was being used for nuclear weapon. So this is why Solid Snake goes to this place called Shadow Moses. And Shadow Moses is an island on the Fox Archipelago, and the Fox Archipelago is real. It's in Alaska. It's the on the tail end of Alaska. It's those islands, that group of islands on the tail end of Alaska. That's called the Fox Archipelago, or the Fox Islands, and that's where this facility is. But Solid Snake thought that this facility was a nuclear weapons disposable facility. That's what they thought in the beginning. And they just thought that Foxhound had taken over it, and that they were going to launch these nuclear weapons and blah blah blah. But it turns out that it was different. It wasn't that at all. It was all being Metal Gear was all being created to launch nuclear weapons on purpose. Like they were doing it. They knew that they were doing it. It wasn't this whole nuclear weapons disposable facility was a cover up. So that nobody knew that what they were doing there. So Shadow Moses was the location of a top secret test launch of a new type of stealth nuclear warhead, conducted by Arms Tech Industries, later known as the AT Corp and AT Security, was a military weapons manufacturing company. So that's what Arms Tech is. So this whole thing was conducted by Arms Tech and DARPA. And what DARPA is it's an acronym, and it means the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And this is an agency of the United States Department of Defense, responsible for the development of new technology for use by military. So this whole project was being conducted by Arms Tech and DARPA, and it was being overseen by Foxhound. So Foxhound is, like I was talking about earlier, Foxhound is your ultimate security unit. And aside from Foxhound, that was overseeing this project, so was the Next Generation Special Forces. But I mean, all was going well until Foxhound rebelled. They turned rogue. They turned terrorist, and they started to use what they were working on in this facility to threaten. So they were like, "Screw this! We're just gonna use Metal Gear for our own benefit, and we're gonna get what we want. If not, we're gonna launch a nuclear missile." So what they did is they took hostages. They put the scientists as hostages, and they hijacked Metal Gear. So that's where Solid Snake comes in. Solid Snake is sent by Colonel Roy Campbell so that he could put an end to what Foxhound is doing. One of the first things that he does is he goes to one of the cells where they're holding one of the scientists, the DARPA chief. He's being held hostage, and he questions him, and he starts telling him about what's going on, saying, that once they activate Metal Gear, there's no turning back. The only way that you could stop it is by inserting 3 keys that will deactivate Metal Gear. Either that, or you have to destroy it. And in the other cell, in the adjacent cell, they have, I forgot to mention another member of Foxhound was MERRILL Silverburr. And MERRILL, she was a member of Foxhound, but when Foxhound rebelled, she refused to go with what Foxhound was doing. So they put her under restraint as well. So they had her in a cell adjacent to the DARPA chief. And while the DARPA chief was talking to Solid Snake, MERRILL was listening, and she was like, "What the hell?" And she's listening to everything that they're saying, and she's like, "Oh my god, I have to get out of here and try to do something." And then while Solid Snake is talking to the DARPA chief, all of a sudden, the guy has a heart attack, like out of nowhere. He's just like, "Ugh," and dies. And the Solid Snake is like, he just had a WTF moment, like, whoa. He wasn't able to tell him everything that he needed to know. So Solid Snake's like, "What the hell's going on?" And then he contacts the colonel, and they start talking, and he's like, "What is this all about?" And Solid Snake is getting the idea that the colonel's not telling him something, that he's just like, "You're not telling me something. What are you not telling me?" And the colonel's just like, "Nothing, it's nothing. I'm not withholding anything from you." And it turns out that MERRILL is the colonel's niece. So MERRILL ends up escaping the cell, and she gets into this. She puts on one of the security guys' suits, and so she's under disguise, and she comes in contact with Solid Snake, and she stops him with a gun in his face and everything, and he's just like, "You're not gonna shoot me. You're a newbie." He could tell, like, by looking at her eyes. And she's like, "I'm gonna shoot you," and she doesn't. But she reacts. They get under attack, and then they both get together. They become a team, but split up because Solid Snake's like, you're gonna slow me down. You go do this, and I'll go do my thing. So Solid Snake goes and looks for these keys. Turns out MERRILL had one of them, so she gives the key to Solid Snake. She said, I think she had gotten the key from the DARPA chief or something like that. So he's like, okay, cool, I got one. Now I need two more to deactivate this Metal Gear. So now what Solid Snake has to do is he has to go look for the lead scientist of Metal Gear Rex, because he said if there's because they told him if there's anybody that knows how to deactivate or anything about Metal Gear, it's him. So they were holding him hostage in the basement or something like that. So Snake has to go look for him. And this is the Arms Tech Chief Engineer Hal Emmerich. But he goes by the name Otacon. Has to do with some kind of anime thing, because he loves anime. It was pretty funny. He was like, oh, I want to do everything that those anime cartoons do, like with those huge Gundams and stuff. And so that's why he got into that job and everything. And that's why he created this big, huge robot and all that. But when Solid Snake comes into the basement to find this Emmerich guy, he runs into this ninja. Like this dude that has a mask, and he's got like this sword, and he's a total ninja. And Solid Snake's just like, what? And the guy, the ninja, wants to fight Solid Snake, and he's like, come on, this is it. And they start fighting, and Solid Snake realizes something in the way he fights and in what he says. And he realizes that he knows this ninja, that he knows who this is, that this turns out to be a really good friend of Solid Snake's from before, like from the past, way back when. And this ninja turns out to be Gray Fox. Gray Fox is known as Cyborg Ninja, Deep Throat, Null, and his real name is Frank Yeager. And he was a really good friend of Solid Snake. He was also an agent of Foxhound back when Solid Snake was. And he was pretty much one of their best agents, which is why he has the code name with the word Fox in it. It was like a huge honor or commemoration for someone to work for Foxhound to have the code name Fox. But they ended up fighting. Gray Fox's loyalty was to Big Boss, forced him to betray Solid Snake, and Solid Snake, they ended up duking it out, and Solid Snake thought that Gray Fox was dead, but Gray Fox survived his injuries, and they ended up fixing him up, and he's now this, like, crazy cyborg ninja. So Solid Snake didn't know about this. When he found out, he was like, I thought you were dead. So what they did to Gray Fox was they outfitted him with a powered exoskeleton and gave him intense gene therapy to keep him alive and to keep him fit and strong as he's always been. But he's almost like a robot now. So after that, Gray Fox disappears and leaves because he goes all crazy. It's almost like he's going to have a heart attack or something like that, and he's like, ugh, and he just leaves. And Solid Snake's like, what the hell's going on? Everybody I come in contact with is having a heart attack. And he talks to this Emmerich guy, the chief engineer that they were looking for, this guy that they call Otacon, and that everything that he knows about Metal Gear, and he's like, I'll help you, reach your goal and blah, blah, blah. He's like, I have a cloaking device. So he uses it, he disappears, and he goes, he's kind of like Snake's eyes and ears from afar.